An overtime thriller in Big D, Stars versus Jets. We've got Stanley Cup playoff action to talk about right now on Locked On NHL Game Night.
When that final horn sounds, you know it's time for Locked On NHL Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before, only on Locked On NHL Game Night. Your team every day.
Hey, hockey fans, welcome to Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thanks for making Locked On NHL Game Night your place to get a recap of the night in the NHL. We're available 7 days a week on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Eddie Garcia, an LA Kings fan on the West Coast. He's Shukri Wrights, a Boston Bruins fan on the East Coast. Together, we're here to discuss all the goals, saves, big moments, and storylines from the night in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And Shu, an emotional night in Dallas, not just for the hockey reasons, but the Stars looking to advance to the conference finals again. The Jets looking to force a Game 7, and it ended up being a really great hockey game as well.
It certainly was a very emotional night and has been a very emotional night. It hasn't just stopped with the conclusion of the game, but rather in the post game as well. And I definitely look forward to being able to get into it all like with you on the show. It's certainly still very much felt.
Yeah, let's get right to it. It was in Dallas where the Stars were hosting the Winnipeg Jets in Game 6 of their series. Dallas holding the 3-2 advantage, looking to close it out on home ice with the win. Of course, Winnipeg hoping to force a deciding Game 7 back on their home ice. This one went overtime, and on the power play, the Stars win it on a goal by defenseman Thomas Harley. 2-1 the final. That was the only penalty called in the game, and it decides the game on a power play. Both goalies were great in this one. We had an emotional story we'll get into with Jets captain Mark Scheifele, but Dallas is moving on. The season is over for the President's Trophy winners. So much to talk about, but let's get it started. We check in on the winning side with our host of Locked On Stars.
Thomas Harley with the overtime winner on the power play for the Dallas Stars to take down the Winnipeg Jets by a final score of 2-1 to clinch the series in 6 games, and the Dallas Stars advance to the Western Conference Finals for the 3rd straight season. And this game had a bit of everything. Both teams were at their best, probably for the first time in the series, just throwing punches at one another. Connor Hellebuck was superb. Jake Ottinger was just a smidge better, and the Stars were able to prevail. They had such a great approach to this hockey game. They really threw everything they could at Winnipeg, and eventually it finally led to drawing the game's first penalty in the dying seconds of regulation, and they're able to capitalize in overtime early. What a hockey game. What a win for the Stars. A fantastic series. And the Stars now get to take on Edmonton and Connor McDavid once again.
And we will definitely get into another rematch between the Stars and the Oilers for a chance to go to the Stanley Cup final. Thanks to Joey Erickson, by the way, our host of Locked On Dallas Stars. We'll be hearing from him as we go forward, obviously, as the playoffs continue. But Shu, 1:46 of power play time to start overtime. The Jets had a couple of clears. It looked like they might be able to kill it off in the dying seconds. So as we mentioned, Thomas Harley, a one-timer, ends it. For those who may not know much about him, a lot of people got to know him in the Four Nations faceoff. Remember, he was an injury replacement for Team Canada, played really, really well. And him and Miro Heiskanen together are a huge 1-2 punch on the blue line for the Dallas Stars. But we're going to get more into the Mark Scheifele side of things. But he was the man called for the tripping penalty late in regulation on Sam Steele, who had a partial breakaway. Did you think that was a penalty? And if you did think it was a penalty, did you think a penalty shot should have been awarded on that play?
This is going to be probably the lengthiest response I'll give you since we've started working together on the show a little over a month ago. But there are some things that are bigger than hockey. And I have to start my response by giving my sincerest condolences to the family of Mark Scheifele, whose father passed away sadly, unexpectedly, just hours before the game. And when I found out, this afternoon, it was thanks to our esteemed colleague Cam and Tyler also of NHL Lockdown NHL Game Night, who alerted us as to what had happened. And as I was watching the game, I paid very close attention to Mark Scheifele, and you could see the emotions on in his eyes during warmups, and even like the pregame coverage surrounding Mark Scheifele, in regards to his decision to play, and as well as you can hear it in Scott Arniel, the Winnipeg Jets head coach's voice as well. And the game was already heightened to be a really great game, but now you add in this factor that Mark Scheifele is playing with the heaviest of hearts, as Bob Wischusen on ABC very eloquently said that he was playing with the heaviest of hearts, and it was he that opened the scoring in this game, scoring the goal that gave the Winnipeg Jets the early 1-0 lead. And for me, it certainly gave me goosebumps because it reminded me of a very similar situation, that another one that Scott Arniel was actually a part of too, and that I remember very well. 2014 Eastern Conference semifinals between the Pittsburgh Penguins and the New York Rangers. Marty St. Louis had sadly lost his mother tragically right around Mother's Day, if you all may remember. Scott Arniel was an assistant head coach with the New York Rangers back then at that time. And in this situation with Mark Scheifele, him scoring and making a 1-0 game, it was like, oh my God, like you talk about tears flowing. Like I found myself getting choked up like during the game. That was the first time it happened. But then also the game itself, the way that it developed with Steele, he scored the tying goal for the Dallas Stars, and as well as the end of the game, which takes us to the penalty that was called that you asked me about. Did I think that it should have been a penalty shot? 100%. I mentioned it even on Twitter that I thought it should have been a penalty shot, but nonetheless, it was still a penalty. But the thing that broke me was, and pardon me if my voice cracks a little bit, was when Thomas Hartley scored on the overtime winning goal. Because remember, it was Scheifele's penalty that he had to sit in the penalty box for, and that the Dallas Stars went on the power play at the very end of regulation. So they start overtime with 1:46 remaining on the man advantage, and Hartley scored on the winning goal, and the series winning goal. And you can see Mark Scheifele just basically lower his head, and it was just so cruel to see a man who was playing with a heavy heart, and now for his penalty to be the reason why the Winnipeg Jets are going home. But the thing that also was very touching was two things. The last point I'll make: Adam Lowry being the very first player to go to the penalty box to console Mark Scheifele after the goal went in by Hartley spoke volumes about Lowry as a captain. And lastly, just seeing the Dallas Stars embrace him, and as well as obviously his teammates as well as part of the handshake line, it was emotional. It was very powerful to see, and it was truly just heart-wrenching. And my sincerest thoughts and prayers and condolences goes out to Mark Scheifele and his family at this time.
Yeah, there's no doubt it was definitely felt throughout the game, and because of the part that Mark Scheifele played in the game, scoring the goal, the lone goal for Winnipeg, taking the penalty at the end of regulation, that obviously weaved its way into the emotional aspect of it as well. Also, though, a storyline in this game was the two goaltenders. We're going to get to Connor Hellebuck in a minute, but let's focus on the winning side for a moment. And Jake Ottinger, I thought was fantastic. 23 shots that he saw. He turned aside all of them but one. Had some huge saves, none bigger than in the third period on Mason Appleton, who had a lot of net to shoot at. I don't quite know how Jake Ottinger made that save. I'm not sure if he knows. Just flailing back in the crease to hope to get into a position to be able to get a piece of the puck, which he did, and save the day at the moment. But Jake Ottinger deserves a lot of credit for this win for the Dallas Stars as well.
Oh, he's absolutely dead. And you mentioned that wide open missed opportunity that Jake Ottinger, I don't know how he made the save either, but I watched the replay and I kept thinking to myself, how did he make that save? And I don't think anybody could have believed it in the arena, or even the broadcasters themselves, or even neither one of us. And Ottinger was truly just absolutely breathtaking in terms of his performance, that big save that he made to preserve the tie, and as well as just continuing to show that yes, he played a terrific series. He bounced back really well after a lackluster performance in game number 5 in Winnipeg. But man, like, it was really a tremendous goaltending matchup between both Ottinger and Hellebuck in this game. But Ottinger, the saves that he had to make, there were at least 3 of them I counted in this game that I thought absolutely saved the Dallas Stars from having to play in a game 7 in Winnipeg.
So for the Dallas Stars, they move on. They've won 6 straight in the playoffs on home ice. And they're now 3-0 in overtime games this postseason as well. We still need to get a report from the losing side of this. We talked about an emotional night, even emotional for our host of Locked On Winnipeg Jets.
They say there are some losses that stick with you for a long time, and I think this one's probably going to be one that I don't ever forget. Game 6, Winnipeg had a chance to try and extend the series against the Dallas Stars. Every emotion that you could possibly feel was probably coursing through our veins, the players' veins. Everyone was feeling the loss of Brad Scheifele, Mark's father. There was just so much pressure, so much intensity, and Winnipeg brought it. They gave everything they had, and they came up just short. In those defining moments, despite getting some incredible play from Mark Scheifele, from Connor Hellebuck, unfortunately, the loss of Morrissey mid-game and just Dallas being a better, deeper team ended up doing the Jets in. But it was a hard-fought effort. You couldn't ask more from the boys, and it'll be a tough offseason for the Jets to figure out where to go from here. Harrison Lee from Locked On Winnipeg Jets here. We'll have all the offseason coverage talking about the recaps and how the Jets move forward throughout the coming weeks. But thanks again for listening. See you then. Have a great night. And as always, go Jets, go.
And thanks to Harrison Lee for that report from the Locked On Winnipeg Jets. We talked about Mark Scheifele, and I will echo what you said. I have no dog in the fight. I was thrilled when he scored a goal. I felt terrible when he took the penalty, which was a penalty. I was okay with him not calling it a penalty shot, but it was definitely a penalty. And I felt terrible when they scored that goal, even though I was hoping for a game 7. But I think the moment it got me in the feels, as they say, was when Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck hugged after that. And you just could tell that wasn't just the typical, hey man, great season, I'm sorry, hug. It was a long embrace, and it was, you could really feel the emotion from that. But speaking of Connor Hellebuck, obviously he's a guy that I guess will still continue to have question marks, but he did play a great game in this one. They did not lose because Connor Hellebuck did not show up in this game. The game-winning goal he gave up, he got screened by his teammate. He couldn't even see the shot on the one-timer. When it's all said and done, ultimately, he's going to be one of those guys that's like a great quarterback in the NFL, right? If you don't win in the playoffs, if you don't get that Super Bowl, it's hard to consider you one of the greats of the greats. His regular seasons have said he's a Hall of Fame goalie. He hasn't been able to get it done in the playoffs. Unfortunately, he came up short again. He played great, but again, that's going to stick with Connor Hellebuck going forward until he does something about it, until he wins that big game, until he can win a championship.
As far as Connor Hellebuck is concerned, I thought he played arguably his best game tonight, even though it was in a loss. But I thought overall he was very much in control of the game, in which that he went toe to toe with Jake Ottinger. And if you wrote down the reasons why the Winnipeg Jets lost Game 6, Connor Hellebuck would be at the very bottom of that list. And I'm not saying that just to be nice. And yes, because I have been critical of Hellebuck, as you know, Eddie. But if, in all fairness, he was stellar tonight. I mean, in terms of the full 60 minutes, you couldn't have asked for more. But as far as the Winnipeg Jets are concerned, and you're right, they are entering an offseason where they're going to have a lot of questions in terms of, like, what do they do now? Because they have a lot of their guys locked up long term. So it's not even a matter of including Hellebuck, exactly. So it's not a matter of contracts. It's a matter of, okay, what is the missing piece that is going to take this Winnipeg Jets team over the hump? That's what they're lacking right now. And as far as what you mentioned about Hellebuck, the Jets are going to be entering this offseason with a losing streak on the road, of not having won a playoff game on the road in over 2 years. And That's going to be something that they're going to have to answer and deal with all offseason long, going into next season as well. So the Winnipeg Jets, the offseason is just getting started, and definitely plenty of questions that are going to be abound for them.
Yeah, Winnipeg Jets are now 0 for their last 10 road playoff games, and the President's Trophy winners once again in the NHL have come up short. We are going to talk Stars Oilers right next, coming up here on Locked On NHL Game Night. There's nothing like playoff hockey, the energy, the rivalries, the nonstop action. With the Stanley Cup playoffs heating up, there is never a better time to see it live. And Gametime makes getting into the building fast and affordable. Gametime gives you last-minute ticket deals, zone deals for deep discounts, panoramic seat views, and all-in pricing with no hidden fees. Plus, ticket prices often drop the closer you get to puck drop, so you can score big without overpaying. See my exact seat before I check out. That gives me total confidence as far as the view I'm going to get. And Gametime includes fees up front with no surprises. They've also got ticket coverage guarantees that cover cancellations and even offer 24-hour returns. And speaking of planning ahead, NFL schedule release is out, and I'm looking forward to picking what NFL games I'll be going to. Gametime makes scoring NFL tickets just as easy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we're still waiting to figure out exactly what our Eastern Conference final matchup is going to be, but we know now who is going to be squaring off for best in the West. We've seen this before. Second straight year, it's been Stars Oilers. This time, Dallas, the second place team in the Central, against the Oilers, the third place team in the Pacific. So Dallas does have home ice advantage in this one. Stars in the conference finals for a third year in a row. They lost to the Oilers last year in 6. Before that, they lost to the Golden Knights in 6. Stu, your initial thoughts on another round between the Stars and the Oilers?
It's going to be a phenomenal series, Eddie. I mean, I think this Western Conference Finals is going to be one for the ages. For a lot of different reasons. Obviously, the star power on both teams. Obviously, with Edmonton, you start with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. And for Dallas Stars, you it's not even just with the two players, in terms of Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn, but now you add in Mikko Rantanen to the mix as well, and as well as Jay Gottinger, who continues to really show everyone why he is one of the very best goaltenders in the league right now, and should be the number one goaltender for Team USA at the Olympics next February. So as far as the series is concerned, I do think that it is going to be a lengthy series. This is not going to be an easy series by any stretch of the imagination. But one thing that I do find amazing is that the Stars have gone through the gauntlet of playing against teams that are in the Central Division to get to this point. And here they are going up against Edmonton, a team that they lost to last year in 6 games. And the thing that I'm most curious about in terms of the series overview is for the Dallas Stars, outside of Mikko Rantanen, can they get going offensively? Because if they're going to beat Edmonton, and I'm going to mark my words now, if the Dallas Stars are going to beat the Edmonton Oilers, they're going to need a lot more offensively from Jason Robertson. You're going to need a lot more from Mason Marchment. You're going to need a lot more from the likes of like Thomas Harley, who scored in tonight's overtime winner for the Stars. But I also do think that in terms of the middle 6 group on forwards, they're going to need a lot more offensively, because Rantanen can't continue to carry the load offensively. You need your other guys to step up huge, especially against this Edmonton team that, listen, I know that McDavid and Draisaitl have been driving the bus, but the thing for the Oilers throughout this postseason has been the contribution that they've gotten from other areas in this lineup, including Evander Kane, including Evan Bouchard, and as well as just getting the collective effort from the Oilers that's got them to this point, which is why I think this is going to be a long series, but this is going to be compelling hockey to watch, no matter what side or what team you're a fan of between the Stars or the Oilers.
Yeah, as an LA King fan, I am a Oilers hater. So let's get that up front. All right. I'm not even gonna try to hide the fact I hate the Oilers. On paper, Dallas is the much deeper team here. However, as you mentioned, Edmonton has been getting that secondary scoring. They've been getting other guys contributing. Dallas has the players. They've got Rope Hintz. They've got Wyatt Johnston. They've got McKeel Granley. They've got a lot of depth, but they haven't always been there every game. We had a lot of Mikko Rantanen, and that certainly is a big difference from last year, right? What's the biggest difference? Mikko Rantanen is the biggest difference from what they had a year ago. But on paper, the Stars are deeper. Will it show up, though, in this series? That's going to obviously be a key, especially for the Oilers. Can they keep that secondary scoring coming as well? I think in net, clearly Dallas has the advantage with Jake Ottinger. I suppose the depth, you would say that Edmonton has the advantage there if for some reason they had to go to their number 2 because Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard have both won playoff games this postseason for them. And Jake Ottinger has gone the whole way for Dallas. If there's some injury, then that flips, right? Then it's an advantage for Edmonton. But I think if Jake Ottinger's on the ice, he's the better goalie night in and night out, regardless of who Edmonton has in net. So I think that's an advantage for the Stars as well. And you mentioned it, battle tested. I mean, you go through the Avs, you go through the Jets to get to this point, taking on a very good Oilers team. It's a challenge, yes, but they've met the challenge so far twice against some heavyweight opponents. Where Kings Golden Knights are good teams, but I don't know that they're at the same level as Colorado and Winnipeg that Dallas has seen so far. So again, I like the Stars in this one. I agree with you. I think it'll be a 6 or 7 game series. The star power is going to get the headlines, but ultimately where that secondary scoring comes from for me is probably what's going to decide the series.
And I couldn't agree more. And in terms of Edmonton, I think the biggest black aces, if you will, for the Oilers in this series against Dallas is going to be, there's 2 that comes to mind. It's going to be Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Zach Hyman. If they produce offensively and they're able to come up with timely goals like they did in round number 1 against the LA Kings, I'm sorry, but if they're able to, that's going to be the difference maker. But if they don't, I think it's probably even match. But again, even with the concerns for the Dallas Stars in terms of secondary scoring, I think Edmonton and the Stars they're both deep, but I think the potency definitely runs a lot more of a higher risk of scoring for Edmonton because you're already seen it through the first 2 rounds for Edmonton Oilers already.
Well, we didn't get a game 7 between the Jets and Stars, but we do have a game 7 in the East. We will talk about that next here on Locked On NHL Game Night. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout play, there's never been a better time to get in on the action, and FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip and during the action. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Which players are showing up in the biggest moments, and how could tracking their trends help you build your next big bet? What would it look like to combine live prop bets mid-game based on how the action unfolds? If you've got a read on who's heating up, why not back it up with the same-game parlay? How could a $200 bonus in bets add to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits? New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, we talked a little bit about it on our last show, but touching on it again, a big Game 7 coming up on Sunday in Toronto. Maple Leafs taking on the Panthers. The Leafs lay an egg in Game 5. They come back and show a lot of guts in Game 6 to force it to a Game 7. I'm sure a lot of their fans are just wondering, are they just making this the heartbreak even more by coming back home and losing it on home ice? They've lost 6 straight Game 7s, have the Toronto Maple Leafs, and obviously they're going up against the defending Stanley Cup champion, Florida, who won a Game 7 to win the Stanley Cup last season. But we did talk about the goaltending. Joseph Woll coming off for Toronto for the shutout in Game 6. Have not heard anything about the goaltending. Anthony Stolarz was coming back from an injury. There is thought that he might be available for a Game 7, but as you and I talked about, hard to imagine they won't stick with Joseph Woll coming off a shutout regardless if Stolarz is available or not. Matthew Knies did not skate on Saturday for the Leafs. He's nursing an injury, got hurt at the end of Game 6. So whether he can go in Game 7 or not, we do not know. But it's a game 7. If there's any way that he can play, obviously you got to imagine he'll get out there on the ice. Craig Berube comes in. He was hired to be a difference maker for the Leafs. Let's see if he can do it in game 7. But as I think you mentioned on the show yesterday, Paul Maurice is 5-0 all time in game 7. So a couple of good coaches who have won cups before going at it in this one. Any final thoughts on game 7 between the Panthers and the Maple Leafs?
This is going to be the defining hour of the Marner, Tavares, Nylander, and Matthews core tomorrow night. And that's part of the reason why I am so excited for Sunday night's game 7 between the Leafs and Panthers, is because of that aspect. They have never won a game 7 as a core together. In fact, in Matthews' career, he's never won a game 7 in the postseason. And they're home. And in the second round, you're 1 win away from the Eastern Conference Finals, somewhere you haven't been since 2002. And as for the Panthers, I'm sure they were feeling embarrassed after their performance in game number 6, where they didn't play their absolute best. They didn't play terrible either, but that third period did absolutely give them in, especially on the Austin Matthews goal in which he scored, which turned out to be the game winner for Toronto. So I expect them to come out firing and ready to roll in game number 7. And as we talked about on yesterday's show, Paul Maurice is 5-0 in game 7s, but Craig Berube is also 2-1 in game 7s in his career as well. So also, I think what's going to be the determining factor in this game for Toronto is the continued block shots aspect of their D. It has been huge up until this point with Chris Tanev. I expect more of the same. And as for Florida, I think Matthew Tkachuk has got to show up now offensively. He has not really been loud offensively in this series, but if he can make an imprint somehow in game number 7, I think it will go a long way for the Panthers to advance to the Eastern Conference Finals.
All right, we've got 3 of the 4 Final Four set: Stars, Oilers, Hurricanes. Both the top 2 teams in the regular season in the East and West, the Jets and Capitals, did not make it to the conference finals. Vegas had the 3rd most points in the regular season. They're out as well. As far as the teams that are still alive, certainly Florida has the fewest points, but I don't think anybody would think they were a major surprise if they get back to the Eastern Conference Finals as the defending champs. I know you picked the Leafs before the playoffs. I think if they win this game 7, it would be a little bit of a surprise that they're in the Final Four for me, maybe not for you. But is there any team that either is in the Final Four or did not make the Final Four that you are really surprised at?
So far, up until this point in juncture, am I surprised that for example, Dallas is in there, Edmonton is there, Carolina is there? No, I'm not surprised. But if I did have to say that there was a team that I was most surprised by that made the playoffs that did not make it to the conference finals, it would, for me, I thought Washington would actually make it to the conference finals. But defense. Carolina plays a brand of hockey, and that boring brand of hockey has won them games and it gave them the ability to beat the Capitals in 5 games. But for me, without question, I think Washington is, because I thought with the year that they have and the way that this team is constructed, they were more than good enough to get to the conference finals at the very least. So I do think that there is a level of disappointment in DC or even in the DMV for the Capitals, because of the fact that many people expected them to get to the conference finals at the bare minimum.
And I think for me, and you can call me a hater again if you want, but to me, I think it's the Oilers. I know they made it to the finals last year, but this year they lose Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg. They weren't as deep. Zach Hyman and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who you mentioned, didn't have great years this year. Yeah, McDavid and Draisaitl are amazing, but their goaltending is not great either. I did not think they would get back to the conference finals this year. So if I had to pick one of the 4 that I'm probably the most surprised at, I think I would probably go with the Edmonton Oilers. But we still have one more game left to go before we get to the conference finals. Looking forward to a big game 7 Sunday between the Maple Leafs and the Panthers. You got a taste of some of our local experts on this show. Make sure you check out the local show of your favorite NHL team to get the latest news and reactions. I'm Eddie Garcia. He's Shukri Wrights. Thanks for listening and watching Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day.